How's it going, fight fans? Welcome to Mindful Combat. If you're new to the platform, well, my name's Rohan, and this is my channel where I do boxing and MMA related content, and you're tuning into my second debate with James Buchanan. Now, if you haven't seen the first, go check it out. It's my debate on Errol Spencer's position in the current standing of the world, and I introduce James Buchanan and give a bit of details. We're also joined by his little man, because his little man doesn't give us the option to have a debate without him being present, so don't let his cuteness sway you in your opinion.
So hello.
Say hello, Terrell. No, he's not going to say it. But anyways, to get into the debate, today's debate is going to be basically how great was Joe Calzaghe? Should Joe Calzaghe be considered among the greatest boxers of all time? Now, I am of the opinion that Joe Calzaghe should be considered of the greatest boxers of all time, and James is not of that opinion.
Not so much so, no.
Okay. So, like last time, we'll have a back and forth. Three rounds each, and we'll make sure we don't cut each other off. People did like how respectful we came across, so let's maintain it.
Let's do that.
So for my first point, I suppose, before going into the specifics of Joe Calzaghe, I'm going to ask what are the parameters of greatness. Now, when we're talking about a boxer who's great and how great they are, I suppose one of the things that we must consider is their accomplishments. Accomplishments is something that carries a huge weight in it. Their accomplishments, their position in their division, the relativity of their achievements in their division among other fighters who are in the same weight class and what they achieved, and being able to discuss what they can. So now, world title fights, unification fights, beating other world champions, and defending world titles. I would say these are all important factors in being able to demonstrate greatness. Also, your record, how many fights you've won, how many records you've lost. Now, I'm not a fanboy that thinks, oh no, you lost a fight so you're not great. But if you've lost fights throughout the course of your career, especially a large portion of fights, does that then impact your legacy and greatness? I don't think overall, but should it take weight in your in your career? So before we get into the specifics of Joe Calzaghe, and of course, more so than Joe Calzaghe, this debate's about the greatness of Joe Calzaghe. So let's confirm what greatness means to you.
Okay. Greatness to me, greatness is skill set. It's, as you rightly say, accomplishments. You know, winning world titles, defending world titles, also your performance, your durability, and, you know, not only what you do inside the ring, but what you do outside the ring matters too.
How you handle yourself as a gentleman.
Absolutely.
Of course. All right. Okay. All right. So I suppose now, going forward, we can both agree that Joe Calzaghe's always handled himself as a gentleman outside of the ring. There's never been no controversy. He's never been tested.
You're right.
He's a gentleman outside the ring. So that's not in discussion here. He's a great gentleman. He's a great representation of the sport. He does a lot of charity. He's a great man. And so now let's focus it on the specifics of his career. Okay. So now let's get into this discussion here. And my first point will be this. Joe Calzaghe had a record of 46-0.
Yeah.
Okay. He won 46 professional fights and never lost a single fight. He won 22 or 23 world championship fights. As an amateur, he won 110 fights. He defended a world title on 21 different occasions. He won world titles in multiple weight classes. He beat multiple world champions. I believe he beat 11 or 12 world champions. It's around 10. I think it may be around that. Don't quote, those are maybe not necessarily exact numbers, but around that number, okay? And he's knocked out 2 of them. Okay? What there is in dispute in terms of factually when we're talking about greatness?
Well, you see, the thing is, when it comes to Joe Calzaghe, I can't really turn around and say, you know what, Joe Calzaghe is, you know, a bum or whatever have you. I can't really say that. There's not an awful lot you can take away from Joe Calzaghe. My thoughts and opinions on him is I particularly didn't really like his fight style. You know, he was much like E Honda from Street Fighter with his 100-hand slaps. So, you know, I just couldn't get into him. I really couldn't do it. Like, I know a lot of people, you know, they saw his brilliance and whatnot, but I just couldn't. I mean, Joe Calzaghe, like I say, you can't take much from him. What I can say about him is, you know, for you to turn around and say, yeah, he walks amongst the greats, I think is a mighty bold statement to make. Joe Calzaghe, yeah, he's accomplished a lot in his career. He's achieved many world titles. He's beaten, you know, ample world champions. However, if you compare him to other greats such as Muhammad Ali, Floyd Mayweather, even Canelo, Manny Pacquiao, you know, you compare him to such champions such as, you know, Sugar Ray Robinson, and you look at their resumes and you compare them to Joe Calzaghe, you'd be like, well, is he really of that caliber?
Okay, so you didn't give me much to retort or respond to in that sense there. So, but you did mention a few fighters, and before I touch on them fighters, I will say this. You mentioned Canelo Alvarez. In my opinion, as subjective, you guys can make your own opinion, so I won't touch on him specifically. But if you test positive for steroids at any point in your career, you're no longer in the conversation for all-time great because you're a cheater. If you're cheating, you're disrespecting the sport.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I really do. I
Yeah.
understand what you're getting. But the fact that he was allowed to continue, the fact that...
Okay, let's not digress. I'm just talking about from my subjective opinion.
I
want to address Canelo because he's a steroid cheat. Yeah. Now, all the other guys that you've mentioned, they are all-time greats. Okay, I'm not saying that he is greater than them. I'm saying that he should be considered in the list of the greats also among them. Those are not. I'm not saying he was better than them. I'm not saying he was better. We don't need to get into a debate of resumes here. Okay, even though we probably could, we don't need to. Let me just make my point.
Go on.
Yeah, we don't need to get into that into a point there. Yeah, I'm not saying that he was better than them. I'm saying he's also an all-time great. Now, because you didn't give me much to respond to, I'm going to throw in another point for you to respond to now, okay?
Go on.
Okay, so one of the things that we agreed on that you need to be considered an all-time great is wins over other world champions. Now, let me list some of the world champions that Joe Calzaghe beat, all right? So we're talking about Robin Reed, former world champion. Talking about Richie Woodall, former world champion. Charles Brewer, former world champion. Byron Mitchell, former world champion. Jeff Leftfoot Lacey, 21-0 at the time, 28 years old, former world champion. I believe he went on to win a world title. Saki Obika, former world champion, went on to win 2 world titles in weight classes above after that fight. Mikhail Kessler, he won 3 world titles. Bernard Hopkins, multiple-time world champion. Roy Jones Jr., multiple-time world champion. Now, if we want to take out the fights that are debatable, because we can get into another debate as to who won the Bernard Hopkins and Joe Calzaghe fight, we disagree there. Let's take Bernard Hopkins out of that list, if that's what you want to do. No problem, okay?
Okay.
I still named ample world champions there. Okay. Now, what are your thoughts on some of those?
My thoughts on that is this, that the only world champions that really and truly count in that list there is Roy Jones Jr., Bernard Hopkins, Mikhail Kessler, and you forgot to mention...
Oh, sorry, Chris Eubank.
Chris Eubank Senior.
Chris Eubank Senior.
Yeah. You know, those...
Not Saki Obika, who won 3 world titles.
Saki Obika, yeah, let's throw him in there. Yeah. All right, he got the win over Saki Obika. You know what? Fine, fair enough. He done a wonderful job. Jeff Lacey, he got the win over him. Fine, wonderful. I can't really say nothing about that, except that Jeff Lacey, in the 12th round, he was pretty much on his last legs.
Okay.
Yeah, and he still failed to get him out of there. And to me, that's incredibly disappointing. You know, if he's on his last legs and a stiff wind will blow him over, I feel as if he should have been able to get him out of there, but he completely failed to do so. If we look at Roy Jones Jr., at the time, he was incredibly on the decline. He wasn't nowhere near his best, and you know, it just wasn't the same Roy Jones Jr. Yeah. So a lot of those wins, to me, are questionable.
Well, I mean, the Jeff Lacey win is not questionable, just his performance.
He's exactly that. His performance against Jeff Lacey, you can't really take much away from. It's just that he wasn't able to get him out of there, which I found disappointing. Mikhail Kessler, you know what? Great win. Fine, fair enough.
Okay, all right.
But the other world champions that you mentioned, it's like, well, who are they when you're at home?
But they were, okay. First things first, I just want to go back to our previous debate and that you mentioned Chris Algieri as being a relevant win for Errol Spence Jr. Now, I do feel that we need to have some level of consistency as fight fans, particularly when we're putting out content that's going to be displayed to audiences. We need to have a level of consistency. But let's not get into that. No problem. That I just felt like that was a point worth noting, and like these are world champions that I would consider higher than Chris Algieri. Anyways, so okay, we want to say that he weren't at the Roy Jones Jr. weren't at his peak when Joe Calzaghe fought him. I don't think anyone would disagree with you there. Joe Calzaghe wasn't at his peak either. Joe Calzaghe was 38 years old, had multiple broken hand surgeries, and he was definitely not at his peak.
People decline at different levels.
Oh no, but Joe Calzaghe was definitely on the decline at that point in time. Joe Calzaghe himself,
but not as much so as Roy Jones Jr.
All right, let's not get into a debate of who was more washed up. But I'm just saying. I'll make my point now. So Joe Calzaghe was also on the decline when he fought Roy Jones Jr. He beat Sakio Bika, who's a multiple weight class world champion. He beat Chris Eubank Jr., who's a Chris Eubank Sr., who was a world champion as well. And Jeff Lacey. Now, here's the point that you made that I really like this point, and it was an interesting point, and I think it leads us onto the final area where we can finish off the discussion. You said Jeff Lacey could have been finished, but he didn't finish him, and you felt like that detracts from his performance.
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we're in agreement that he definitely beat Jeff Lacey. He dominated Jeff Lacey, almost finished Jeff Lacey.
Yeah, he did.
Now, here's my issue here. Okay, we are not debating his style. I am not saying that he was the biggest knockout artist of all time. I'm not saying he should be considered one of the best finishers of all time. Simply that he should be considered among the best boxers of all time. And now, so now it becomes an issue of this. To be a great boxer, do you believe you need to... So, dropping Joe Calzaghe for a second, I'm going to ask you a flat-out question, and then you can make your last statements. You can answer the question and make your last statements, okay? So, Joe Calzaghe, out of the equation, okay? Because you've mentioned that he weren't able to finish Jeff Lacey, and that was incredibly disappointing. I'm saying that being able to finish fights, in my opinion, doesn't take away from your ability as a great boxer. Actually, I would say more to the fact that Joe Calzaghe had two very damaged hands and never had huge punching power, and was in there with world champions who, in a punching contest, and he couldn't punch for, he never had the same firepower as they did, and in the fact that he was still able to out-punch him and beat them, that adds to his resume for me. Now, anyways, let me get onto the question. I just felt like I must make the point before we wrap up. Generically speaking, to be considered among the all-time greats as a boxer, must you be someone with a killer instinct and a great finishing mentality and a great finishing record, and someone who was able to finish fights?
No, not necessarily.
One second. And someone that was able to finish fights? Or is skill set an important enough skill that, say, someone like Floyd Mayweather, if you just rely fully on skill, and even if you get finishes or not, you win and you demonstrate your skill beautifully, you should be able to be in that discussion? Your point, sir.
Okay, my point is this. No, you don't necessarily have to have that killer instinct and knockout power to be considered an all-time great fighter. Like you said, Floyd Mayweather, he also had brittle hands, and he also didn't have the best punching power in the world. But you know what? With the difference between Floyd Mayweather and Joe Calzaghe is, if you look at when he fought someone like Shane Mosley, he landed solid, hard punches. It was none of that Honda stuff, 100-hand slap stuff. There was none of that. He was solid, hard, crisp, sweet punches. Joe Calzaghe, he didn't display that for me.
Okay.
And that's what takes away from the fact that, you know, he could have been an all-time great sort of thing, you know, because his skill set for me just wasn't the greatest. You know, he's quite sloppy and he just wasn't all there for me. For me, he wasn't all there.
Right, okay.
He wasn't a finished article.
Okay.
I mean, don't get me wrong, whatever he was doing, he got the job done. He won all of his fights, and, you know, he managed to...
A 46-0 with 23 world title wins is not the finished article. What is?
Okay, yeah, you know what? He defended his title numerous amount of times, but against who, though?
Well, I've already laid out multiple world champions and some all-time great world champions. But hold on, let's not digress.
Hold on. You named some that, like I said, who are they when they're at home?
No,
okay.
Yeah,
some
but
people
you're being inconsistent.
Hold on. Some people are world champions, and that's great. However, I do feel nowadays more and more people are just being given a belt. Look at Enzo McAnally, for example. Even he was a world champion, and we can both agree. Who's Enzo McAnally when you're at home?
Okay, but okay. I'm confused because you're being very inconsistent in your delivery.
I'm not being inconsistent. No, I'm not being inconsistent.
But how can you point to... Okay, anyway, that's another debate. All right. Yeah. So you've made a few points there. Do you want to make your final points and I can respond and then we can wrap this up?
My final points is, you know, I can't take an awful lot away from Joe Calzaghe because he has accomplished a lot. However, the only point I want to get across is because of how he performs inside the ring, from my personal opinion, I don't see him as an all-time great.
Okay. Now, guys, I'm going to put it to you. Here with James, we've agreed that there's certain parameters to be considered in greatness. Joe Calzaghe met all of those parameters of greatness. James says he never had the style that was most fan appealing. I don't feel like a finishing ability is necessary to be considered among all-time greats. And the fact that his hands were brittle, so to speak, I believe adds to the myth of Joe Calzaghe, because these guys weren't able to beat him in boxing matches despite the fact that his hands weren't 100% there. He was able to beat multiple world champions, and he was able to do it in a lot of great style, and he beat a lot of great fighters that it's undebatable have their own position in greatness. So guys, I'm going to put it to you guys. Do you think Joe Calzaghe deserves to walk among greatness like I think, or do you think that, like James does, that because he never got the most spectacular finishes,
I just didn't particularly like his style, you know.
Okay.
And also when you compare him to other greats such as Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, Manny Pacquiao, Saul Alvarez, you know, when you compare him to them, you know, it's like, well, his resume just doesn't stack up, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you think Joe Calzaghe racks up in all-time great. Definitely the best boxer to ever come out of the UK, in my opinion. And I would like to know yours. Thank you for watching, guys, and thank you for being here, Jay.
No worries.
Thank you too, little man.
And what do you think?
Thank you, guys.